The one with the male nanny is episode 6 of season 9 of Friends. This is directed by Kevin Bright, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And I'll talk about each of the parts of the narrative in turn. I will talk about Monica and Chandler first of all, and then I think Mike and Phoebe, and then the character of Sandy. Monica is on the phone with Chandler, and she happens to tell Chandler that the maitre d' at her new job is the funniest man she's ever met. And suddenly Chandler is very awake, and Monica just is clueless. She doesn't realise what she's said. And Chandler comes home and basically starts vomiting jokes everywhere. And he confides in Joey, and then Ross finds out, and immediately they get it. They realise what Monica has done, and they talk with her. And then she realises, I still don't think she necessarily gets it, but maybe slightly. And then all of a sudden, Monica, Ross, and Joey start laughing at everything Chandler's saying, even things that aren't funny. And he realises what's going on. And Chandler says to Joey, "Did you tell her what we talked about?" And Joey's laughing. He laughs hysterically in response to that. It was brilliant. And Chandler's obviously not happy about this because these are pity laughs. And just as he's about to leave to go back to work, he happens to mention haha-not-so-much.com. And I googled it. Well, I searched it. And if you search haha-not-so-much.com, it actually redirects to the Friends page on the Warner Brothers website, which I thought was a really lovely touch. And Monica manages to save things by saying the guy at her work told an offensive joke and now he's not funny anymore. And Chandler seemed happy with that, so I think everything resolved quite nicely. Then we come to Mike and Phoebe. And they decide to swap keys in Central Park, so they now have keys to each other's apartments. Everything's going really well between them. And then Phoebe's back at her apartment, and David shows up. He's back from Minsk. And it's a nice moment. I think it's a really nice surprise for David to be there. And he asks her if she's seeing anyone, and she says no, which is pretty awkward, and she confides in Monica, and Monica says it's so ironic that David turns up the day Mike and Phoebe decide to swap keys, to which Phoebe responds, "Given my lifelong search for irony, you can imagine how happy I am," which I just thought was the best response ever. I rather enjoyed that quite a lot. And then she talks with David, Phoebe talks with David, and she tells him that actually she is seeing somebody. Massive credit for Phoebe for doing the right thing quite quickly. Granted, she shouldn't have said no in the first place, but she did try and fix things to rectify things as quickly as possible, and then they kiss. And now they're both bad people. Because beforehand, David had no reason to think that she was in a relationship. He had no reason to back off, if you like. But now he knows. And they both kissed, and they're both now as bad as each other. Well, maybe Phoebe's slightly worse, but generally both as bad as each other. And then Mike walks in. Because, of course, Mike has a key to the apartment now. And he catches them. And, oh, it's a horrible moment. It's powerful. It's very well done. But it's absolutely horrible. And Mike and David get into a finger fight, which was very funny. And David was actually really sweet. And he was saying all the right things. He was inviting Mike to come to Minsk in the spring, and he said as he left, "Take good care of her," which is so sweet. It shows that he still does really genuinely care about Phoebe, and it was a really, really lovely moment. And I'm glad that Mike didn't just storm off, decide to end the relationship. Phoebe said absolutely that he can take his key back if he wants. He would be well within his right to, but he doesn't. He accepts that this probably won't happen again. And I have to say, he was a very big person in that moment. Credit to Mike. I don't know how I would have responded if I were in Mike's shoes. I don't feel like I would have been as, I don't want to say calm and collected as Mike. He definitely was quite agitated and annoyed. And, well, as I said, he got into a finger fight with David. So there was definitely some anger there. But I do feel like his response is atypical but admirable. And I really like that about Mike. So basically, Mike has just been painted in the perfect light in every episode so far, which is great to see and great for Phoebe, of course. And then we come to Sandy. Rachel and Ross are trying to hire a nanny. And their latest applicant is, they believe, a woman called Sandy. Ross is talking about her resume and she's this and she's that. And they open the door and it's Freddie Prinze Jr. And Sandy is a man. And Rachel's great, no problems. Ross is uneasy and very inappropriately asks Sandy if he's gay. And then later on in the episode says that he has to at least be bi. Like, completely inappropriate. Really, really inappropriate. And Ross just thinks Sandy is too sensitive. Now, yes, he is very, very sensitive, but it's clear that he loves spending time around children. He's clearly great with kids. Rachel loves him. Ross just has issues. And there's one point where Ross tells Rachel he's just too sensitive. And then we cut to Sandy playing Greensleeves on the recorder. Beautifully done as well. I played the recorder for many, many, many years, and I definitely couldn't make it sound as beautiful as that. So I rather enjoyed that moment, and the transition was very well done. And Rachel tells Ross, well, if you're not comfortable with him, and I have to say credit to Rachel, because Ross did say to her, I wouldn't make you hire a nanny you weren't comfortable with, which is a fair point. It's not acceptable that Ross is uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, if that's how he feels, it wouldn't be fair for Rachel to continue with Sandy if Ross is uncomfortable, as much as it's just not acceptable. I get the point. So credit to Rachel for realising, okay, that's a good point. You wouldn't hire somebody I'm uncomfortable with, so it's not fair for me to do the same. But with the caveat that Ross has to be the one to tell Sandy, and he tries to tell Sandy, but this is after Sandy has had some fun with some puppets, and Joey's really enjoying it and learning a lot from Sandy. He's just a really great guy. And Ross still doesn't see it. So he sits down with Sandy and he tries to say that we think, but Rachel's in the other room shouting through, making sure Sandy knows that this is what Ross wants. These are Ross's thoughts and feelings. And Ross tells him that he's ultimately he's too sensitive for him and it makes him uncomfortable. And Sandy accepts it. I would imagine that maybe Sandy has heard it before. I'd hope not. But Ross can't be the only person who feels that way. And Sandy was understanding and asked Ross, why do you feel that way? And I thought that was a really interesting moment, because not only is it interesting for us as viewers to watch it and learn about Ross, but also if anybody is like Ross, maybe it can make them question why they would have a problem with it as well. Why do you care if the nanny is a man, and a sensitive man at that? And Ross does have an answer quite quickly. He says it's probably because of his father, and the fact that his father was more of a tough love kind of person. And yeah, as soon as Ross said that, I thought, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could understand how Ross would be the way he is, being raised by Jack, who maybe doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve quite as much. So I thought that was quite interesting. And if it makes even one viewer question why they feel the way Ross does, and maybe hopefully makes them rethink how they feel, I think that's a pretty good thing. And it's just a really sweet moment, and again proves just how brilliant Sandy actually is. So I think it does a really great job of first of all, showing that men can be nannies. It's not that weird. Just because you're male doesn't mean you can't love children. So obviously I know that there are some people who might want to do it for the wrong reasons, but certainly that's not the case with Sandy. He had a lot of references. There were apparently a lot of other families wanting to work with him, which was a gut punch for Rachel, because he chose them because he liked those the best, which is going to sting because they're kicking him out and he liked them the best. So a lot of emotions are in the air. And I do think that Ross was wrong to feel the way he did, but I'm glad that they had the chance to try and work out why Ross felt that way. And I thought that was really important. So I think they handled the topic really, really well. And all things considered, it's a really brilliant episode of Friends. Do I have any personal highlights? Well, the moment Mike walked in the door and saw Phoebe and David, I didn't enjoy it from a satisfaction perspective, but it was very, very effective, very powerful, very, very well done. It's not really a highlight of the episode, but I enjoy the fact that hahanotsomuch.com redirects to the Friends page on Warner Brothers. I quite like that. And Joey's laugh at Chandler was very funny, and I guess Sandy as a character as well. And David's character as well, not the kissing of Phoebe, but I guess how he spoke to Mike in that final scene with David, I thought was very good. All things considered, and I don't think it needs to be said, the one with the male nanny is a really brilliant episode of Friends.